Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you to today's presentation. Today's topic is how, when, and where, which will guide us through some important aspects of our subject. On this first slide, I just want to briefly introduce what we'll be exploring. We'll look at the timing, the methods, and the locations that matter most. So let's dive in and get started. Let's now move on to slide 12, which is titled, What Official Records Do Not Tell. Here, we explore the limitations of relying solely on official records to understand history. Official records often reflect the perspective of those in power and may omit the voices of marginalized groups or everyday people. They can be biased or incomplete, giving us only a partial picture of past events. This is why it's important to consider other sources and methods in our historical research. Recognizing what official records lack helps us develop a more nuanced and comprehensive understanding of history. Let's take a closer look at the East India Company. It was an English company established specifically to exploit trade with East and Southeast Asia, as well as India. The company was incorporated by royal charter on December 31, 1600, marking its official start. Initially, it functioned as a monopolistic trading body, controlling commerce in these regions. Over time, however, its role expanded beyond trade. It became deeply involved in politics and acted as an agent of British imperialism in India from the early 18th century through the mid-19th century. Its activities in China during the 19th century further facilitated British influence and expansion there. Moving to a different but related topic, let's talk about James Rennell. Born on December 3, 1742, in England, he was the leading British geographer of his era. Rennell is best known for constructing one of the first nearly accurate maps of India, a significant achievement for geographic science. He joined the East India Company and served as Surveyor General of Bengal from 1764 to 1777, contributing greatly to the understanding of Indian geography. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's briefly touch on the caste system in Hinduism. There are 5 main types of caste, which organize social life and relationships in traditional Hindu society. Understanding these social structures is essential to grasping the broader social and historical context of India. Speaking of history, it's important to remember that history is about change, how societies, cultures, and systems evolve over time. It's essentially a span of time, capturing moments of transformation and continuity that shape our present. All these topics connect to our overall theme of understanding how historical forces and social structures have influenced the world we live in today. We cannot determine a specific date when British rule started because it actually happened over a span of time. It wasn't a sudden event, but rather a gradual process that unfolded gradually. Similarly, our taste for drinking tea didn't develop overnight. It took a period of time to become a part of our daily lives. This idea of history being a span of time is important because it reminds us that many cultural changes and historical events happen gradually, shaping our society over years or even decades. Understanding this helps us see history not just as a series of isolated events, but as a continuous flow of developments that influence us today. Earlier, history was often associated with a string of specific dates. This is because, in the past, history mainly focused on recording battles and major events that shaped societies. But today, our understanding of history has expanded significantly. It's no longer just about dates and events. It now includes a broader perspective that looks at the how and what aspects of human life. For example, we consider how people earned their livelihoods, what they produced, what they ate, and how their daily lives were structured. This shift helps us understand not just what happened, but also why it happened and how it affected everyday life. So, the key point here is that history has evolved from a simple timeline of events to a more comprehensive story of human existence, connecting past and present in a more meaningful way. Dates become important when we assume that a particular set of events are important. Most of the history in India was written by British historians. These historians started writing with the rule of the first Governor-General, Warren Hastings, and ended with the last Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten. When selecting a set of dates, we need to consider certain criteria. These criteria help us decide which dates are significant enough to mark the course of history. They ensure that the dates we pick truly reflect major turning points or key moments. This process connects to our overall theme of understanding how history is recorded and interpreted. It reminds us that not all dates are equally important, and choosing the right ones helps us grasp the bigger picture. In 1773, Warren Hastings became the first Governor-General of India, a significant milestone in the British administration of the region. He was known as a competent, honorable, and far-sighted administrator, qualities that helped shape the future of Anglo-Indian relations. His policies, although sometimes controversial, played a crucial role in stabilizing British influence in India and setting a foundation for future governance. However, his tenure was not without controversy. The actions and decisions of his administration drew considerable scrutiny back in Britain, leading to his impeachment and trial. This chapter highlights the complex legacy of Hastings, how his leadership contributed to both the consolidation of British power and the political debates that followed. Overall, his story underscores the challenges of governance and the long-term impact of colonial administrations on India's history. In 1817, a Scottish economist and political philosopher named James Mill published a book called History of British India. In this work, he proposed dividing Indian history into three main periods: the Hindu period, the Muslim period, and the British period. When we talk about criteria to periodize history, we're essentially asking, what are the key factors or characteristics that define each of these periods? Mill's approach was based on political, social, and religious changes that marked different eras in India. For example, the Hindu period was characterized by the dominance of Hindu kingdoms and culture before the arrival of Muslim rulers. The Muslim period was identified by the rule of Islamic dynasties, which brought new religious and cultural influences. Finally, the British period begins with colonial rule, which introduced new administrative systems and economic policies. Connecting this to the overall theme of our presentation, understanding how these periods are defined helps us analyze the historical development of India more clearly. It allows us to see how each era's unique features shaped India's social fabric and political landscape over time. Before the Britishers took over India, the region was ruled by Hindu and Muslim rulers who, in many ways, exploited the land and its people. At the same time, India was deeply rooted in complex social structures like the caste system, and it was home to a rich tapestry of religions, superstitions, and cultural practices. These aspects contributed to a society that was quite diverse, but also divided in many ways. Now, some historians like James Mill believed that British rule was necessary to bring about progress. He felt that only the British could civilize India, teaching manners, arts, laws, and order. This perspective reflects a broader idea that colonization was seen by some as a civilizing mission, though it's important to view this critically. All of these points, pre-existing social and political structures, set the stage for understanding how British rule eventually shaped India's trajectory. It's a complex history, and recognizing these elements helps us see the bigger picture of India's transformation during colonial times. Let's take a look at how history is classified. We start with ancient history, which spans from around 4000 BC to AD 500. This period covers the earliest civilizations, like those in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, and sets the foundation for later developments. Moving forward, we enter medieval history, from AD 500 to AD 1500, a time marked by feudal systems, the rise of kingdoms, and significant cultural and religious transformations across the world. Finally, we arrive at modern history, from AD 1500 to the present, which includes the age of exploration, industrialization, and modern nation-states. Now, within this broad framework, Indian history is further classified into specific periods, helping us understand its unique evolution over thousands of years. This classification helps us see how different eras contributed to shaping India's rich and diverse cultural heritage, and how each period connects to the larger story of world history. This overall structure allows us to better appreciate the continuity and change over time in Indian civilization and its influence on global history. Let's talk about some common terms we use to label years: Anno Domini, or AD, and before Christ, or BC. These terms are used in the Julian and Gregorian calendars to help us understand historical timelines. The term Anno Domini, which is medieval Latin, means in the year of the Lord, referring to the approximate year of Jesus Christ's birth. On the other hand, before Christ, or BC, is used to denote years before that pivotal event. Essentially, BC counts backwards from the estimated birth of Jesus, while AD counts forward from that point. These labels are important because they help us organize history in a way that's meaningful and consistent. They connect to the overall theme of our presentation by showing how humans have developed systems to measure and understand time across different cultures and periods. Now, moving on to slide 12. Here, we see that the modern period is associated with the growth of all the forces of modernism. But an interesting point is that under British rule, people were not really getting modernized in the way we might expect. Instead, because of this lack of true modernization, the period's name was changed to the colonial period. This shift in terminology highlights how, when one country subjugates another, meaning they take control through political, economic, social, and cultural means, it's what we call colonization. So, colonization isn't just about political domination. It's a complex process that brings about significant changes across all facets of life in the colonized society. This idea helps us understand the broader impact of colonial rule beyond just governance. It affects every aspect of the people's lives and the development of the nation as a whole. When we look at the official records of the British administration, it's clear how important writing was for them. For the British, putting things in writing wasn't just a formality, it was essential. Every plan, policy, and agreement was documented carefully. This habit created a distinctive administrative culture centered around memos, notes, and detailed reports. They also took great care to preserve all these documents, storing them in record rooms attached to every administrative institution. Interestingly, these documents weren't just hurried notes. They were often penned by calligraphists who specialized in beautiful handwriting, reflecting the importance they placed on record-keeping. Now, when historians study the last 250 years of Indian history, these official records are some of the primary sources they rely on. They provide us with invaluable insights into the British administrative mindset and policies. So, understanding how these records were created and preserved helps us grasp the broader context of colonial governance and its legacy. Conducting surveys was quite a common practice during colonial administration. The British believed that in order to govern effectively, they needed to have a thorough understanding of the country they were managing. So, by the early 19th century, detailed surveys were being carried out across the entire nation. These weren't just random efforts. They included specific types of surveys, such as forest surveys and zoological surveys, among others. This systematic approach helped create accurate maps and records, which were essential for administration, resource management, and planning. Now, moving on, I'd like to highlight the importance of record-keeping in this context. The record room we see here is where all these documents and letters from government officials and administrators are stored. These records are arranged chronologically, starting from the 18th century, and are preserved very carefully. This particular archive, the National Archives of India in Delhi, from the 1920s, is a prime example. It shows how important it was to keep detailed records, not just for administrative purposes, but also for historical documentation. So, overall, conducting surveys and maintaining detailed records were crucial tools for colonial administrators to understand and control the region better, and they laid the groundwork for many developments that followed. Records do not tell us what other people in the country felt or experienced. They mainly come from diaries of individuals, travelers, and autobiographies of important personalities. These sources give us insights into the lives of literate people who documented their thoughts and experiences. However, when it comes to the broader population, such as tribals, peasants, workers, or the poor, there are no extensive records available. This means that much of their history remains unrecorded and unheard. It's important to remember that official records reflect only part of the story and often overlook the voices of those who did not leave written records behind. This highlights the importance of looking beyond official documents to understand the true, full history of a nation.